I guess so.
So I can't vote to do this.
We're on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're waiting for a quorum, so we're going to do some business that we have to take care of, that discussions. And then if we do get a quorum, we'll open the meeting. Thank you for your patience. Okay, first master plan update, Jen.
Sure. We can do that first, or do you want to switch the order, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Doesn't
can.
matter to me.
Yep.
Yeah, we do have a room full of folks that we
Yeah.
could,
We have a room full of
we could
folks.
invite forward and talk with.
Yeah.
Why don't you let them see what the master plan update is? That would be some interest.
Sure. Up to you guys.
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Kimberly, why don't you come up to the microphone? Yeah.
I tried to bail you out.
We all do it,
Very friendly.
even if you don't, it picks you up anyway, so.
Taking over
Could you
here.
introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Queenet. I've lived in Litchfield for 16 years. And I'm interested in maybe participating in the planning board, trying to see what it's all about.
So,
No, you sit down.
Keep sitting,
Yeah,
okay.
We don't let people out that easy.
Oh, okay.
What's the reason you're interested?
Like I said, I've been here 16 years. I'm starting to see a lot of development happening. I don't understand the process of how the decisions are being made, but I'd like to learn more about it. I definitely see transformation is going to happen, and hopefully it can be a balance between the residents that are here and respect why people move to New Hampshire, and obviously welcome people who are coming to New Hampshire.
Any questions? Matt?
oh, well, just out of curiosity, Jen, if we are asking these questions now, is it part of the process that you will have to do this again?
No.
No, I don't think so.
okay.
No, but the.
Well,
okay,
it'd
so
just be
here's-
kind of
here's the
awkward
pickle.
having it on
You
television.
can't
I
vote
wrote it down so I can reread it.
Here's the pickle that you're in. You don't have a quorum,
So we can't vote to
so you can't vote.
send this line.
And you don't have a quorum of people here that are getting to meet the folks that are interested in joining you on the board. Eventually, ultimately, as a board, you have to vote to make a recommendation to
Right.
the selectmen to make an appointment.
So could we discuss at the next meeting? Could we discuss to save her time?
Yeah.
Could we discuss at the next meeting amongst the board for the basically the members that were here, discuss with them and make the recommendation without her here?
You could, or she can.
Or she
you can
can come.
invite
Or
her
you
to
could come. I mean,
rejoin
I'm just
you
trying
at
to
the-
figure
yeah.
out if we're gonna make you do
either
things
one.
twice.
Yeah.
Once you join the board, you come into these meetings anyway.
Anyway,
Right.
right.
So you might as well start coming to meetings.
It's good to see people on that side.
Yeah.
I saw that video.
Too often we play to an empty room.
What do you do for work?
I'm a computer scientist. I own my own company for 20 years. I usually work in Massachusetts, just being honest here. I want to move my company to New Hampshire, but I really have been so flat out busy, I haven't had time, but I'm starting to get a little bit of time to do the things that have been on my to-do list for a long time.
Gotcha. What part of Mass?
I usually work on the 128 belt, many
Okay.
different companies. Sometimes
Gotcha.
I'm allowed to work remotely from home, which I do like. I don't know how the tax structure works in Litchfield on that. But I am a Massachusetts corporation at this point.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And is it so we meet at 7? Is that a challenge for you or on a?
No, because when I negotiate my contracts, I can say certain days are
Gotcha.
where I have to be.
Very good.
I feel for you. I did that. I used to work for high voltage engineering.
Where
On
town is it?
128.
Yeah, so it's about 2 hours one way.
Yeah.
Depending, it can be on the road 3 or 4 hours a day, easy, yeah.
Well, I got back when it was a 2-lane road.
Yeah. That was awful.
A few years back.
Yep.
Russ?
No, I can't think of any questions, so
Okay,
appreciate
Thank
the
you.
introduction and thank you for coming
Thank you.
in.
thank you.
David?
How are you doing?
Evening.
Evening.
And why would you like to join us?
We're relatively new residents. My wife and I are to Litchfield. We saw the sign out front and responded because we chose Litchfield. And we chose it for its charm. We chose it for the fact that it's not heavily developed, but it still has a lot of the common town type facilities which you'd expect to see. And we were charmed by it. We had looked for literally a month for probably at 50 different properties, and we kept coming back here. We're a neighbor of this physical location. In fact, peering out the back window, you can probably see us.
Where'd you move here from?
California,
Oh, okay.
What part?
coast to coast move. Northern California near Sacramento.
And you're a consultant as well?
I am. Information technology, project management, program management.
Gotcha.
Manchester.
Okay. You knew where I was going. It's a quick
At
commute.
least you want to fight the traffic.
Yeah, no. You should
Hey,
be
there's
okay.
traffic up there too on their
I know.
exits now.
Yeah.
It's not 2 hours though. It's not 2 hours each way.
I'm also a member of the executive board for NRPC
Mm-hmm.
in Merrimack. And we have a meeting tomorrow night at 6. And all I see is traffic coming north. I just sail right down.
It's a
I'd
much
say
better.
9 times out of 10.
So where you moved from, was it, I mean, how did that, where you lived before, how did that compare to Litchfield? I mean, Litchfield's a relatively small town. Do you come from a small town out in California? You come from a big town?
It's relative. In El Dorado Hills, which is where we were from, I'm gonna guess that we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 people, and that was a small town. That was a small town. That was a small town. But in California, it's an entirely different environment. What you have out and back here, we didn't have in California, unless you were really, really lucky, really fortunate to live close to the forest or close to nature in some way, shape, or form. Small streets, 2-lane roads, they don't exist. So it's very much a change for us, and we really like it.
That's awesome.
I moved here from Salem.
Oh.
And even that's a big difference.
It is, and each town is very, very different, and each town has a little bit different kind of charm, and that's one of the reasons why we picked Litchfield, why we chose Litchfield, was the charm and the fact that it isn't overdeveloped, but it's not underdeveloped. It's kind of nice in a nice sweet spot for the town.
And hopefully it won't get too overdeveloped.
Was California more county government?
There is quite a bit of county government, yes, absolutely. But there's also the cities and towns, and even what they refer to as unincorporated areas. So it's a very complex state to local government structure. Sacramento, as you're probably aware, is the state capital. So many of the people that you live next door to are in fact in some form of government or government service in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I think you'd bring an interesting perspective to the board, so
Thank you.
for applying.
Love to be a member. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Tyler Perrin. Lived here in Litchfield, moved here in May of 2011. So, from Indiana.
Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah, I was born in Rhode Island, and my father got a job transfer when I was 2, so moved to Indianapolis, and so my wife, she's from Indiana as well, but she got this job offer in Merrimack. Kind of couldn't really refuse it. I mean, and I always wanted to come back to New England, so we moved back and looked at Londonderry, Litchfield. Actually, I mean, really fell in love with Litchfield. It's a nice area, small town. Like that part of it.
You moved here about the same time I did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest difference is real estate taxes. I mean, that was a huge thing. So, but
And so you are either in real estate or you're getting into real estate?
I took the class, the Anne Flanagan class, and so I'm done with that. I need to apply for the test and then take the test.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at now, so.
Very good. It's definitely. I'm a real estate attorney, so
Okay.
in respect to what we do, it actually I find it useful for a lot of the stuff. So I think that would be useful for you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nothing.
And what
Still
made
nothing?
what made you think of, what gave you interest in
Interest?
joining us?
Well, I mean, I'd like to know more about, since we've only lived here for, 5 years, I'd like to know a lot more about Litchfield in general. And I think, once I get into real estate, I'm gonna start part-time, then get into it full-time, and I think, the more I learn about the area, the better it would help me in that field, so
Mm-hmm.
that was the main reason.
And a lot of the stuff we do, we compare with other towns in the area
Yeah.
on different things. So you get an overview of what other towns are doing
Yeah,
at the same time.
it'd be helpful as well.
And no, there's no obstacles for you in getting here either.
I work in Merrimack, so from till 5, so
Gotcha.
I'm home at 5. Yeah, no problem at all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Then can we just say, if they were to get on the board and they're appointed, the board makes a recommendation and then the selectmen appoint. If you were to be on the board, you get a, email address that the town gives you. And then, we put up a Google site every meeting, so there's no paper anymore hardly. And you just tie into the Google site to get the agenda and what's on the meeting.
Only the chairman gets to do both.
Do you want to talk about full board member versus alternate?
Yeah.
Just for everyone's
Yeah,
sake.
right now, we have 2 openings on the board. They're 3-year terms, and we have 3 openings as alternates. 2 alternates.
2 alternates.
Openings.
Yeah.
I thought we could have more alternates.
Your bylaws say 3, state statute says 5. So if you wanted to have 5 alternates, you'd have to amend your bylaws.
But, one alternate that we have now might be moving up, so then there would be 3 spots.
Right. Right. So you have, Paul is a alternate currently. He might, the
So-
board decides he might move up as a full member, so that still leaves one full member seat open.
Yeah.
And then the three other alternate
Basically,
seats
we
open,
still have
so.
4 openings.
But what it comes down to in terms, the difference between a full member and an alternate, I liken the alternate to the substitute teacher. But you're always here, because there's always somebody absent. So, and as you can see tonight, with a shortage of board members and alternates, it's tough to fill the seats and have a quorum. But alternates are, requested to join all of the meetings, sit at the table, participate in the conversation. What it comes down to is voting. If you have all 7 board members there, and you're an alternate, then you refrain from voting. And that's it. If there is a person vacant, then Tom, as chairman, can ask that you step up to fill that vacant seat, and then you become a voting member for that evening, in place of the absent member.
That's why we like to see the alternates here at the meetings, because that way they're up to date on what's going on. And please, we enjoy and need the insight from as many people as we can get. You'll be surprised, there's very many opinions, and it all helps.
Do you want to talk about training, Office of Energy and Planning training sessions and?
It's June 3rd.
June, yeah. You can,
You want me to talk about
yeah,
that one?
please.
Okay. The Office of Energy and Planning does an annual Saturday training day, workshop day, conference day, whatever you want to call it, for planning and zoning board members. The entire day is dedicated to kind of educational opportunities for volunteer board members. Not so much for us as staff, although I'm running a session. I'll be there this year, but they do a really phenomenal job of walking through all of the basics, all of the roles and responsibilities. So they've got sessions that are dedicated to the brand new board member, and then they have more advanced sessions that are dedicated to folks that have been there for a while. You've got, a particular issue in your community, you want to learn a little bit more about it. You get different planners or allied professionals from across the state that are working on a particular project that might have something to share, learn from another community. They'll have those presentations as well. And we have on the Google site kind of gone through and compiled all of like the best of the best how-to guides that are out there in the state, so that there's some, when you come and you sit there on your first day and you're like, oh my god, there's some information there to help you kind of get familiarized with the process. Matt, you're the newest. I mean, too overwhelming to get adjusted or learn what's what? I'd say it's pretty.
No, because Jen's here,
easy.
so.
So Joan and I are staff, and we try and kind of feed that technical support so that you guys can make all the important decisions.
Without these two, we'd get nothing accomplished.
And I apologize. Jen says she works for National Regional Planning Commission. She's our circuit rider and advisor.
Yeah.
And she's also assistant director. So
Regional
without
Planning
her, we get very stagnant.
So I work on contract for the town, so I'm not here in the town offices, except when Joan calls me and says, hey, can you come to a meeting?
So basically what we discussed then is you can either attend next week and we'll put our next 2 weeks, whatever. The next meeting we'll put it on the agenda though to discuss making a recommendation.
Just double checking it wasn't a 5 Tuesday month.
No, it's the third.
May 3rd?
So it's 2 weeks, yeah.
Right. So correct though. So it'll go on the agenda, and you don't have to show up. But if you do show up, that's fine. Either way. Good.
And you're welcome to stay and listen to us discuss. The 3rd of March.
May.
May 3rd.
March. I want to go backwards.
Yeah. So we meet on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of every month.
Tom, one thing that might be worthwhile asking the folks is if they have a preference over full board member versus alternate. They don't have to tell you tonight, but maybe if you knew that before
Yeah, something
the
we'd
next
ask
meeting,
before.
'cause you'll
you
have
think about
to
it.
split and divide somehow
And basically, the only difference is voting,
voting.
if there's a full board. But like I said before, other than that, everybody's equal on it. Okay,
And as Paul found out, sometimes you end up voting every meeting you're at.
yeah.
Now, if it helps, the bylaws for the planning board are accessible on the town's website.
Yeah.
If you're curious, go in, read up, get familiar with the bylaws that we work under. That would give you some insight as to how the process works and what your place in that process would be.
You can also see yourself on TV too. If you follow the link, if you follow the link, you can view some of the older meetings.
That's true.
To watch us in action.
Yeah.
Action. Go on, action.
It's riveting. All right, so we're gonna move on to master plan.
Thanks for coming in, folks. It's good to have your interest in this board.
As you can see, we do need some fresh blood.
Yeah.
We need blood.
Need blood.
Something.
Take it.
As long as it's pumping, at least pumping, we're acceptable.
Pulse. That works. Yeah. Oh, goodness. All right.
So I mean, how far into this master plan update do we intend on getting tonight? Just out of curiosity, with 3 members.
I can tell you what my goals were.
Yep.
Do your goals
They were,
remain the same
like,
with your
down
groups?
here.
Okay.
Without having a quorum. I don't think it really affects. So, the last meeting, you guys said you wanted to look at some examples of what a community design chapter looked like. So you've got 4 different examples that I sent, along with like a really short bulleted summary of what the 4 are and what they do. So that was one piece. And so my kind of goal was just to get your general reactions to those, whether, you know, for each of the 4 you liked it, you hated it, you were intrigued, just that general impression, and then overall what you thought of a community design chapter as a new piece of your master plan. That was my goal for community design. I think without having a quorum, that's fine. We can still I can get those general perceptions, because then it helps me just kind of eliminate some things from the to-do list or radar. Helps narrow that focus of where those next steps might be. For the transportation chapter, again, it's on the agenda merely so that you guys could have an opportunity to look at the old one. And again, general sentiments and thoughts. The majority of the old one is data-driven. It's not until, oh my goodness, later in it that it starts getting into
like the last third of it.
Yeah, the more squishy, the more opinion based, how we feel about how things perform from a perception based, what's important. So I mean that more gets into kind of like from page 23 on. And that, you know, really focuses on circumferential highway. So again, my thought here was just really high level, general thoughts, general perceptions. You know, are there pieces we can just get rid of it? Not helpful, not informative, not relevant. Here are some areas where instead we'd like to start thinking about. And then just from the, you know, logistical side of it, the data side, I would say don't stress about that for now. What I'll do is Julie and Matt from my office, who are 2 transportation planners, I'll have them start pulling some of the data, because they've got a lot of this right on their desktop. They can start pulling it, plunking it in for us, and that'll help get that updated.
I think so. I can sum up my impression of the transportation chapter in like one sentence. I think that it's outdated, and I think that basically just, you know, obviously updating the data is one thing, like that's pretty black and white.
Yep.
And then just trying to feel out, you know, some of those projects that were mentioned there are already done or are no longer being considered. So I think, you know, chopping anything that's not relevant anymore or has already been completed, and just, you know, trying to figure out if there's anything else that's, you know, popped up since then. But I mean, other than that, it's the structure of the chapter. The structure of the chapter seems to be fine.
Structure's fine, but content is.
Yeah, could use freshening.
As a related point, not positive if I mentioned at our last meeting. In June, we've got 3 different Thursday nights in June that we're planning a series of transportation workshops. They're regional workshops, but we're doing sub-regions. The one that'll be the easternmost portion of the region will be in Hudson. I believe it was June 30th.
Yep.
I think we're working west to east. Hudson, June 30th. The whole goal of that is to talk about regional transportation priorities. Those big projects that might get state or federal funding. Litchfield has none listed currently, and potentially has projects that are eligible. So that's a conversation that we should tie in. But as part of that, all of the, you know, the transportation model stuff that's mentioned in here is getting updated. So we'll be updated for those workshops. So worth attending. Available in around June 30th. We know it's kind of infringing on summer vacations.
I believe I did let her know I was coming for that.
I don't know if we even started an official RSVP list. We haven't even officially announced them yet. Tom's got the inside information because we're just mentioning it to the executive committee tomorrow night. So,
Do you have an extra copy of that sheet?
Why wait till the last minute?
The four,
It should be, I think you'd enjoy it.
yeah.
You get a lot out of it.
Did you guys have anything on the transportation chapter at all?
I'm curious where the circumferential highway is falling into plans. Is it ever gonna happen?
That is part of the
That's part of the
conversation in
conference.
June.
Good.
So there's the circumferential highway's been kind of broken into a couple different parts. They're all still listed in the region's long-range transportation plan. I think the majority of which, however, have been demoted to the information-only section. There are projects that folks have said they liked that were once higher up in that ranking, but have since been pushed down the priority list. So that's on the table for discussion at that meeting. And one of the things that, from us as that Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization, we need to figure out is is it still a priority? So
Is it still relevant? Is
Is
it
it-
something that should be in our
right.
master plan? Should we even hold space for this?
right.
We've been talking about this since
So
I was a kid.
I was trying to like wrap my head around that project. So part of that has already happened, right? Because the Hudson portion of that is existing,
The southern portion.
So
Right.
the South Bridge has been built.
and the Raymond whatever resort
No.
that is not
That's
part of
not
it.
part of
Okay,
it.
so
That's
that was a separate thing. Okay.
Correct.
So what we're talking about is something that's more like midtown.
Almost, I think it's close to that southern portion. So
It's
this
got,
parcel of land
yeah,
down
right there.
here, this is actually owned by the state.
That's the right of
And
way
this
point.
was the right of way for that circumferential highway. So it would have connected coming through here and now, but I think it was connecting here to 3A, and then the bridge was down just south of Litchfield, but really close to the town line. So,
So it's essentially, it's a direct crossing that's going to be less congested, but it's not
Right.
much farther north than the current crossing into downtown Nashua from Hudson.
Well, it's a ways.
It's,
Yeah.
it's that almost the halfway point, you get the other one down in Nashua, then it be generally in this area, and then,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
you've got north
Yeah.
of Litchfield.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
the
because
new-
it said the border of Merrimack and Nashua, so I guess
Yeah.
that's.
So
But
the-
one huge thing that you should be aware of, history-wise, in
Yeah.
that circumferential highway, is that the section through Hudson was vetoed by EPA Chairman John DeVillers back in I forget what year. So would imagine that veto
Yeah.
still stands.
I am not sure. They'd have to go through the whole
They'd have
NEPA
to go through
process again.
Yeah.
all-
I mean,
yeah, yes,
it'd
it'd be-
all be.
Yeah,
It'd be tremendous.
because I think the latest and greatest, they were
beautiful.
just getting rid of the Everett Turnpike connection. It
Right,
was gonna start at Route 3
right.
and come across.
Right, exactly. So that was another. So, oh my gosh, I think we have a white paper that was done like in
Yeah.
2001 that looked at all of the different alternatives, at least just for a bridge crossing. And so there were some alternatives that looked at just connecting 3 and 3A.
Yeah.
There's another that brings it all the way over to the F.E. Everett. There's another that shows like the full completed circumferential highway. There's several different variants of it. Essentially, that model still stands
Yeah.
with the understanding that some of the numbers have to get updated. But the other piece that drives that model is population, dwelling units, the employment, and as we all know, while there was some change from 2000 to 2005, there wasn't a heck of a lot from
But
2007
those
to the
statistics are going to be
present,
taking into account because this is going to be serving Hudson as well.
so- right.
So that's going to be both Hudson
Mhm.
and Litchfield.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
well, yeah, it's Hudson, Nashua, Merrimack, Litchfield are the four directly involved in that conversation.
There it is.
And some of the people in Hudson I've
Yeah.
talked to
That's
do
pulled from the white
approve
paper.
of it.
It's also pulled from our master plan. That's where I found it.
Yes.
And this project has been in works for in excess of 40 years.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, that part through Hudson did have an EPA veto, and so the environmental impact statements would all have to be redone. It'd be a huge amount of
So that's
federal money.
that dashed section.
Yeah.
There, I believe.
Wasson Road,
Right.
circumferential back way.
Yeah.
It's my route home from work every day.
There you,
But Hudson has brought that up again
they have
as a separate project.
Which one, the northern part of
The
it?
dotted line.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's Wasson Road.
Yep.
Largely, it's that corridor.
And so what would they be doing? Widening Wasson Road? And,
I think bypassing it.
They actually bypass it. Be a new road built in
Oh, I
parts
gotcha.
parallel to it, and then it diverges off a little bit.
gotcha.
But, yeah, they were looking at just that one section, just to alleviate a lot of traffic in that, at the other bridge, South Bridge.
There's a
So
lot of
it
traffic.
sounds to me like for our transportation chapter, we can start weeding out some of the stuff that's irrelevant. But this is something that will be a substantial portion
Yeah.
that would need to wait until June.
Yeah, and I mean, in the interim, you may even want to, you could do some informal or formal outreach within the community just to get a larger public input on whether folks still see this. Well, I don't know if you can even, well, it's in your master plan, so we'll say, do they still see this as a priority?
Is it still relevant?
Is it
Should
still relevant?
Should it remain in the master plan?
Right,
Is it realistic? Does it stand a chance of actually getting built?
right. Yeah, and your past surveying that you did, 2012, 2013, didn't really touch upon transportation issues and priorities. It was really focused on big picture land use,
Yeah.
and economic development, and ag preservation. So,
Well, and as we saw looking back on that, we really had relatively poor response rates on that stuff. So
yeah, it could have been better. It doesn't have your 5% margin of error or less. It was slightly worse than 5%.
We still filled this place up a couple of times, though.
Yes, you did.
Reasonably good turnout for what it was.
Yeah. That first session was very
Yeah.
Yeah.
good. We had 3 rooms full.
Yeah, it was fortunate that it's the police department next door, not the fire department, saying you're at capacity.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So do we have anything else on the transportation chapter for tonight?
I have nothing to you, Russ?
high level thoughts.
Yeah. Mostly, I'm just curious about the circumferential highway.
All right.
So I'm happy to lead the charge on community design since I've been the one that's.
Real quick question: do you? Well, there's only 3 of you. We can ask again next meeting. Excuse me. I'd consider putting together some survey questions. It could be a really short. Here's a couple questions about your transportation priorities. At least getting some input. Some's better than none,
Yeah.
regardless of your response rate. All right.
So with respect to the community design stuff, I didn't get to read through all 4 of them. I got through. I know, incredible, huh? But I looked at primarily at Brookline, and then I also looked a little bit at Lebanon.
Okay.
And I think, I still think that community design is a really important thing, primarily given the fact that most people here have identified that they like an agricultural feel, small town feel. People are very opposed to, development. And I think that we don't even know what does it really mean to have an agricultural feel, other than there's farms, but we don't really know what it is that people value about that in particular, aesthetically or otherwise. We also don't really know, like what about small town, what still keeps something small town but provides amenities to people that they might want. So there was a little bit of conflict in the survey responses because some people expressed an interest in having some amenities, but to me, it sounds like the overwhelming population in the town is afraid that amenities means strip mall development like Hudson. And so I think that really honing in on what design options there are, in terms of, how, if we were to bring stuff in like that, how can we still keep with what people think is agricultural? I think that that's an important process, and I think that it's, you know, as I mentioned in a couple of the last meetings, I think that that's something that's a important pillar in
We have a
lot
quorum.
of our.
Well, let's get this thing going.
I would just say that with the Brookline stuff, sometimes it gets a little too fluffy for me. Sometimes there's just a little too much. There's too much wording. There's too much, you know, I don't know. It just seems like there was a little too much talk around everything. So, anyways, that was my feedback on that.
Okay. So you thought Brookline had too many words?
It wasn't that it was too long. It's just that as I was reading it, I'm like, what? I don't know. It's kind of hard.
This one's my favorite.
That one is.
Yeah, the Pennacook one.
You write that?
I did not. Nope.
Did you write Brookline? Am I like just raining on your parade right now?
Nope. I didn't write any of them. Rain on any other parades.
Just making sure.
No. Thought that the Pennacook one did a really good job of breaking down elements of importance.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at is trying to identify the elements of importance.
But theirs was thick. I don't think that it needs to be as thick.
And I'm not. I think I'm more opposed to just over discussing things
Okay.
in sections as opposed to. It's fine to cover a wide range of things, but it felt to me when I was looking through some of this that certain elements were over discussed to a point that it was not really relevant to
Okay.
the idea of what we're trying to
Okay.
get across. So
Yeah, I felt the Pennacook one has more substance that's particularly related to what it is that makes a space or a place feel the way it does and drives that character. So they break it down. I would say the criticism is it feels like it repeats things. They go through a bunch of things, talking about the fluffy side of it, and then they get into the recommendations. But they break it down, your district boundaries, so they identify sub-districts. So this is a village, this is a neighborhood that they took, and then they sub-broke that down into smaller districts. They've got more granularity, though, to the community, so that makes sense. But then they go, buildings, okay. What about the buildings in our community makes them feel the way we want them to feel? And they take it to articulation, massing, scale, setback. And they repeat that for the different sub-neighborhoods to show that context. And then they diagram that. They take, your building facade and say, okay, well, it's this pattern that repeats that makes it have that village feel. They talk about doors and windows. They go, it keeps going. They hit parking as parking's it can instantly kill the feel of your neighborhood. If you look and you just see a sea of asphalt, what is that? Yeah, it's not what you're going for. Landscape, open space, again, they talk about your tree canopy, they talk about parks, they talk about open space, your green space, and how that all fits into the bigger picture. So just in terms of how they break things down and articulate them, I think they did one of the better jobs.
yeah, I wish I had looked at that one instead of Brookline.
Still have time.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now, but yeah, this is more, going through this is more along the lines of what I envisioned for what we need. I mean, obviously this is a much different
it's a different context.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to borrow content. But you
No,
could,
but we
you
would be able
could-
to develop our own based off of
Right.
this, yeah.
But in terms of like an organizational structure, that works.
The only thing that I think will be a challenge for us is if we, so I would imagine that when this was most recently, updated or whatever, there was already a substantial, there's a substantial mix of use in the town. And so the one challenge that we face is that there's not here. So if we want to talk about what that might look like, it's very hypothetical. So it's going to be pulling off of, for example, the limited commercial development that I've spoken of in the past, what does that look like in a town like Litchfield? I mean, you're talking about, like I've said in the past, like Hollis or something like that, stuff like that. It's not.
There's nothing wrong with looking to other communities to illustrate what you want.
Right.
When you're talking about a vision for the future, you're naturally talking about something that may not be here today, or maybe it is here today and you want to retain exactly that, or you may say, okay, well, there's some things that we would support and we're interested in that just doesn't exist here today. But this is the scale and context that we're imagining. There's absolutely nothing wrong with looking to other communities for your illustrations.
Well, that's the extent of my feedback as of right now.
Other thoughts?
Well, I know that we talked about at one point trying to come up with an idea for sort of a town center. And, having, police department, fire station. We had one at one time, obviously on
Yep.
3A. But what that would look like, I think, in terms of, future development.
Yeah.
Is something to consider, I think. And how that's gonna look.
So, community design chapter would be a perfect place to kind of talk about that.
Right. And if we can even, if it is something that's even achievable at this point,
Well,
and if
yeah,
it's not,
I mean-
or if it is, where that happens to be
It's a
and what
vision.
that looks like.
Right.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So one thought or question, if you do tackle a community design chapter, would you want to use it to look across the entire town, or would you want to look at specific zones?
Like a historic district or something like that. Yeah.
You could say, okay, these are our commercial districts, and we're just going to focus on commercial districts in this community design section. Or you can organize it differently in terms of how you address it. You could do something where you talk about commercial and you talk about residential in general, and then you say our town center, we would, that doesn't exist, but we'd love to see exist. This is what we envision for that. You could. There's multiple different ways you can break it down and parse it out.
It might be easier to start with a smaller section and then build off of that for an entire town community design. But, sometimes, like, a lot of, the towns that you go into that have, like, that people walk, they drive into and they say, oh, there's such nice charm to this town and they love this, right? Like, you get that with, like, the Concord, Mass, or like anyone that's watching this is going to be so angry if I talk about Massachusetts, but whatever, I'm doing it. But the reality is, you if you go into some of these towns, sometimes it's a nice little downtown. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but it's nice. Or I get this with Milford a lot too, actually. So let me use New Hampshire, Milford. People like the like the little downtown in Milford. And sometimes if you have that to build off of, then you can that becomes the identity of the town, and the rest of the town sort of loopholes around that. So if we are creating a small subsection of the town based off of what we have right now, based off of agricultural principles, based off of, you know, small town feel, design it like that, then it'll kind of, I think it'll give back, you know, everything else.
Just like to note that we are now open as an official meeting, that we have the quorum.
Yes, you do.
So do we have to do a roll call then? Or no? Are we voting on anything today?
Yes.
Yeah, you have a forum.
So do we have to do a roll call? No? Okay, good. Anyone else on the community design stuff? Now that I've talked forever.
Really? No.
You just got here.
I know.
I should have put you on speakerphone. You could have
Should
listened.
have, yes.
Could have.
Could
Good
have,
idea.
right.
While he was
Would
driving
that have
down.
counted?
Yeah.
I don't
I don't know if our
No.
bylaws allow that.
You have to still have a physical quorum present, but if you have one member, once you've achieved a physical quorum present, who, for some extenuating circumstances, can't be physically present, then you can put them on speakerphone. And they could vote via speakerphone, and their vote would count. But
So,
I still think.
given that we now have a quorum, we can, if we would like, address these applications.
Yeah,
Is
we
it-
could.
Yeah, is that something that you were interested in
Yeah.
doing today?
If Mike has any questions, would like to ask them anything,
Sure.
if you people don't mind.
Does Mike have all
Did
three?
you already talk to them?
Yeah,
or-
we did.
Yeah.
We did
Oh, you
already
did,
talk.
okay.
That's how we started the meeting. We've made new friends, we like them.
And just to give you so
They're
we
breathing.
covered
Yeah,
basically
shut
what
up
they
with
do
time.
professionally, whether or not they believe that it would be a conflict to get here, what their interests were in joining the board,
Okay.
and how long they've been in town.
Okay.
So Kimberly's been in town for how many years did you say? 16 years. And then let's see, Tyler has been here five. Yep. And then David has been here for
All of 8 months.
8 months. Yes.
He's a newbie.
Okay.
He's also local.
He comes from California,
Ah,
Indiana.
okay.
And I didn't ask Kimberly where she came from 16 years ago.
I'm from Mass, but I was living in Alaska and Washington DC.
There you go.
at the same time.
Nothing wrong with that.
Wow.
There you go.
Well, let me ask you folks, I mean, if you were to become members of the planning board, what do you see, throw it out there, what do you see as the vision for the future of Litchfield?
That's tough,
That
that's
was a good
big.
question.
Since we're talking about vision and the master plan.
Well, I'll take a crack at that one. I haven't been here long. I like the charm of the area. I recognize the fact that it is more of an agricultural community. I wouldn't want to lose that charm. But by the same token, you also want to provide amenities that people want. And you certainly need to be able to update and upgrade the facilities of the city as well. That being said, I think that, I mean, in hearing what's going on with the master plan, you're doing the right thing and taking a look at other master plans and other sections of master plans from other communities. But I wouldn't want to lose that charm. But by the same token, the possibility of bringing in a small amount of commerce. My wife and I talk about the fact that there is no gathering place in Litchfield. It would be nice to have some place where, I mean, I hate to use Boston as an example, but Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Having a community place where people gather and mix and socialize would be, I mean, a tremendous heartfelt thing for my wife and I. That's one of the things that we lacked in California that we were looking forward to in a smaller community. So you asked the vision question, and I could definitely see that as something that I would be absolutely open to.
I think that, Litchfield, if you look at Londonderry and Hudson and, Manchester, I mean, it's so unique with the fact that it doesn't have all the commercial. And you can drive to either one of these places to go and get to that necessities, but, so I think that keeping it sort of unique the way it is now with the just residential and the farming and everything, I think would be beneficial for the town, in the future, because, you can drive. I mean, it's kind of inconvenient somewhat to have to drive, but I think people, for the most part, get used to that, but, living in Indiana for about, for 25, 30 years, the farms out there were just huge, but I mean, obviously, the farms up here are so uncommon that, keeping that would be better than trying to get rid of that.
So just interesting feedback that I should want to give you. It's great to have differing viewpoints, and I think as someone who I think I subscribe to exactly what you're saying. When I talk about commercial development, I'm not talking about we don't need even Dunkin' Donuts per se. That's not what I'm talking about. I think the gathering place thing was great. The interesting thing that we've talked about the farms in the past is just that what happens when people stop farming. Because the farms are great if you have people that want to continue farming, but if it's not a farm anymore, then what is it? I mean, it's an overgrown field and someone ends up selling to be more houses or something like that. So that's why when I approach the idea of what does it mean to what is it about an agricultural community that people really enjoy, we're going to at some point inevitably have to look at that in the context of what's an agricultural community without farms, because it seems to be the trend that the farms are slowly going away. But I think that's it's good to have differing viewpoints. We've had them on the board before. It gets heated sometimes, but it's good because ultimately it brings the right thing for the town. Yep.
I fear if nothing is done proactively that Litchfield will get trampled on because of its location and it being a bedroom community of Boston. I like the agricultural aspect of it. I think just selling the idea of fresh food to people is very attractive in this day and age. A little commerce I do like. I know more people are going to be working virtually, but if you go down to Bedford on 101 West Amherst, they do have some, I don't want to say industrial parks, not really, but they look more hometown feel, and that you would want to approach it that way. At least I think. I don't think the Dunkin' Donuts. I know Litchfield doesn't have a post office, a grocery store, what else don't we have, you name it, fuel, right? But I kind of like that aspect of it, honestly, for me anyway. So you're right, I think people are used to commuting in and out. There's no nice way here yet, really. But I think to preserve it would be better. There's growth coming, but I think if we can control it better, would be the way to do it instead of reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Good answers.
And so Jen had brought up the point, which I don't know if any of you have given this any thought since she brought it up, but do you have an idea whether you'd be interested in a full board seat or as an alternate?
Well, the main difference is, like you said, just voting.
Yep. The main difference is voting, although, as we discussed, I mean, there's many times that the alternates are voting. Because if there's not if all of the members aren't here, then there's room for the alternates to vote. And then also, when there's turnover, there's room to become full members as well.
I know when I started on the board, I started out as an alternate. And the first meeting I came to, 2 of the board members said that they were leaving at the next meeting. So guess what happened? You became full member. So, there is turnover sometimes, but having the people here and, and being an alternate doesn't mean that you're excluded from the conversation at all. It means that your input is as valuable as the full board members. So don't feel that, just because you're an alternate, well, you don't have a say, you do. So.
Tom still takes the attendance.
Yep.
He still marks you absent if you're not here.
Russ and I joined the same time, and when we came before the planning board, like you are tonight, we were alternates. A week later, when we went before the selectmen, we were on regular members.
And a few months after that, I was chairman.
Yeah. And I was vice
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah,
So-
moved fast.
Well, the answer to your question for me is, strangely enough, yes. And I answer yes to a one or the other question because I'm here for the town. I'm not here for, I have to be a fully voting board member or I don't. I'm here to share what I know and try and contribute. Whatever value I can add, I'm willing to do that.
Now, don't let him impact what you guys say. If you guys just want to be a full board member, you can say that.
I think probably starting out as an alternate, I'd be more comfortable with that.
Okay.
No pressure. I would like to be a full member.
Okay.
Okay. It's good to know.
Okay. So does the board have any more questions? Or any discussion amongst the board?
We're gonna make a motion that we recommend that they,
Go before the selectmen.
the Board of Selectmen,
I'll second that.
All three candidates?
all three candidates.
I agree.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Passes 4-0-0.
Who seconded that, please?
What we will do, we'll pass these on to the Board of Selectmen. They will call you, make arrangements with you to interview you. And you'll know that night, so, or usually you do.
Don't be afraid of them, they're just selectmen.
Yeah. Their questions are different than ours. Like when I was interviewed, they asked me what I thought of paying $2,000 for a pencil sharpener. It's just the way they quirks everybody has. But, yeah, thank you for coming in, and we look forward to you being accepted and serving with us.
Should they plan to come to the next meeting?
Hmm?
Should they plan to come to the next meeting?
And every meeting after that.
It's a short block for us.
Yeah.
Joan, when do the selectmen meet again?
The selectmen
Monday.
meet on the 25th, I believe,
Yep.
and if they appoint you that night, then appointment papers have to be written up and you have to be sworn in by the town clerk
Yep.
or by a selectman.
So,
Say, for example, if Paul wasn't immediately sworn in, but he still came and attended
right,
the
you still come, it's
meetings.
just,
So,
and he
Most recent.
participated
yeah.
with us. It's
Stuck
just
him
that he
up at
could
the
not be
table of-
appointed onto the board to vote.
Until you're sworn in.
Yeah.
Yeah. But swearing in is, if you can't make it during the day, she's here Monday evenings. It takes 5 minutes. And they are 3-year terms. So, yeah. You're ours.
Just kidding.
And I don't think there's ever been a reappointment turned down, so a 3-year term turns into a lifetime. term.
Yeah.
Passing notes.
Actually, by statute, that's true. No, there is a little statutory piece in there that says that even though your term has elapsed or has ended and you have not been reappointed and your successor hasn't been reappointed, you still continue to serve until someone is reappointed
How
or
do
is
we-
appointed.
How do we get Mike get
So
away with
Mike
that?
Capriolio should still be showing up here.
Yeah, he should be.
Yeah. He's not technically off the hook, even though his term ended and he declined to.
Has he left the state yet? Is he still living?
I think he's still in town.
Yeah,
Doesn't
passing
matter.
notes.
I think he's going
Oh,
back.
passing
That's an
notes.
interesting question for me.
Okay.
Why do people?
No, to you, too.
Well, this,
Just my chicken
this guy
scratch.
Mike, he's moving to North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's sick of the cold. There are different reasons. A couple of members that were on when we joined, just
Aged out.
were getting at that age that they didn't want to do it anymore. So, And the ages run the gauntlet here, so.
One of the gentlemen who a few years ago now resigned, Joel. He was just his schedule was too busy.
Yeah, Joel, yeah, he
wasn't, and he regretted that he wasn't able to make
yeah.
the meetings as frequently as he needed to.
That's gonna be my undoing when my term ends. I'm thinking my schedule won't allow me to continue on. It's been a
We'll call
challenge
your
making the
employer.
time.
Yes, it happens.
Moving on, Joan. Annandale.
So I put the letters from Lou Karen on the site. They do not need to ask for a release of their funds. That would be on a bond, they do need to ask for a release, but on the escrow, we just have to have letters from Lou stating that everything was done, and he's done with inspections.
And it looks like Lou has accepted everything they've done.
Mhm.
So we just have to verify that we feel it's done.
Lose
Right,
word is
I
good
have
enough for
the-
me.
Those letters, and he had a couple issues, and they were all cleared up, and so I think everything's all set. And I talked to Kevin about it, and he's fine with everything down there.
Yeah, I talked
And
to
it's a
Kevin
private road, so I did not
Yeah,
talk to the road agent.
Yeah, I talked to Kevin this morning too, and he says, got no problems with it. What's the board's feeling on this? To accept the engineer's report?
Yeah,
I'll make a motion to accept the report and recommend the refund of the escrow.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0-0.
Yep.
Minutes for the 5th.
Make a motion to accept the minutes for April 5th.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Passes 4-0-0. Just a couple of things tonight. The sewer information meeting will be the 25th, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, at the selectmen's meeting at 6 o'clock. They're coming in with a report on that. OEP, we'll have the information for everybody if they want to go for the training this year.
That's June 3rd.
I believe so. Hold on.
I think it is,
Is it being held at the place that was last year?
I don't know.
Grapponi and Concord.
Yeah,
June 4th, excuse me.
June 4th.
It's a Saturday. Yeah. Yeah. Grapponi Center. I want to say they start bright and early, like 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Goes all day.
Now you have to register for that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think they just announced registration.
Yeah, I
think
got
just
something, I
last
hadn't had a
week.
chance to open it yet,
Yeah.
so,
You can always find it and resend it.
yeah. But that is something if you're interested, even you people, if you want, I think they should, once it's accepted by the selectmen, you could sign up for that. It is interesting, I've been twice through it, and there's a lot of good topics are brought up, a lot of very intelligent people putting the seminars on,
Fantastic speakers.
Yeah.
yeah.
They really do.
And it's also a place to meet people from other towns doing the same job.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Ready for a motion?
no, the next meeting will be the 3rd of May. May, correct?
Yep.
Okay, yep. And hope everybody can join us, and now you can make your motion.
Make a motion to adjourn. I thought I mentioned to get out of here.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0-0.
Yeah.
Okay, Kim.
Thank
could
you all
give me
for
your
stopping,
email
Kenny,
address?
today.